Question is the bill be now read the second time. Honourable Member for Nelson.
Thank you, Mr President. I rise very briefly to speak on this bill, and I'm really very happy to be doing so. Thank you to the Greens and to the member for Hobart in this place on their behalf for bringing this bill forward for us to consider and debate. It's an incredibly important piece of work, and it's made possible in the context of a minority parliament, which the member for Elwick has also mentioned, and I think that it's worthy of mentioning. The reason I think that's worthy of mentioning is that I think we all here would acknowledge the incredible importance of the role of our independent statutory oversight entities, and we have legislated for these entities to be in place to undertake that oversight role in order to ensure Tasmanians are protected, that decision-making and governments are accountable, to make sure that our systems work as well as we want and expect them to. But here's the thing, Mr President. The attitude of a government towards the independent statutory oversight entities is writ large in two ways, in my view. It's writ large and demonstrated in the way that those entities are treated by government, primarily through both the extent to which they are funded sufficiently in government budgets and the response that a government makes to the recommendations made by those oversight entities. And on that front, Mr President, it's absolutely clear what this government thinks of our independent statutory oversight entities. And they don't think much of them. When you look at the fact that they're chronically underfunded year after year after year, to the extent that, as the member for Elwick alluded to as well, and we have noted many times in this place, in these last couple of years, the people at the heads of those independent oversight entities have had to come into the public domain to plead their case for the lack of funding that they receive to just do the basic work that under statute they're required to do. Now that is shocking, Mr President. It's shocking that we see that. I am sure that the people leading these entities have got to the absolute end of their tether, exhausting all private direct entreaties to government on the matters of funding before they get to the point of coming into the public domain and stating that they need that funding to do the basic work that they're required to do under the acts that establish them. That's appalling. And, Mr President, it's a blatant statement about the value that this government places on those entities. That, and the other side of it is, how are the recommendations made by these entities responded to? Is there a prompt, welcoming response where recommendations are actioned and put into place through policy and processes? Typically no, Mr President, and that's what this bill is a result of. Year after year, when these recommendations have come forward for just sensible law reform, quite frankly, to update the Act that underpins the Custodial Inspector, basic law reform to make sure that the functions of the office can be undertaken appropriately, that people are protected appropriately when they're engaging with the Custodial Inspector and the like, as we've heard from the member for Hobart in relation to what's in this bill. The lack of response to those recommendations made speaks volumes, Mr President. It's a blatant and obvious indication of a government that really does not care about or for independent statutory oversight. And that's it's shameful, quite frankly. So, in that context, and because we have a minority government situation in this parliament, we now have at least the opportunity and the great pleasure, actually, in seeing something progressed on behalf of a statutory entity to improve the way it's able to do its work, to provide better protections, to make just sensible basic law reform to the Act that underpins it because of that neglect for many years, in the face of that neglect for many years, I should say. So it's great to see that. I would really hope, Mr President, that we would see some different indications from this government in relation to oversight entities such as the Custodial Inspector, but of course all the others. when it comes to the budget that we're going to, the interim budget that we'll be seeing later this week. I don't hold out much hope. I'm not going to hold my breath, that's for sure. But we do know that particularly, and Member for Elwick mentioned this, and I'm going to reiterate it because we have discussed it already other times that we've talked about the last two budgets in this place, or the attempted budget earlier this year and the one before it last year, that the NPM, the Tasmanian National Preventative Mechanism established under our OPCAT Act, has only been around for a couple of years. We can all remember, those of us who are here, passing that Act a couple of years back, and it was a nation-leading thing to do at the time. We were really on the front foot. And then, after funding being provided for the development of the office and the role, what then needed to happen was for a new approach to funding that office that would actually fund it to do the role. That was last year, Mr. President, and guess what? Absolutely no funding to do the role. We were literally told by the NPM, which was also the Custodial Inspector, also the Ombudsman, that they didn't have the funding available to go out and do the inspections that were required under the Act. None. Could do none of it. Couldn't do none of the activity legislated. Absolutely shocking. If that's the case on Thursday, Mr. President, when we look at this interim budget, my goodness me, that will be every single member of this government saying that they do not care about or value the work of oversight entities. It's as simple as that. Mr. President, I'm not going to go in detail through each of the elements of the bill. The member for Hobart took us through them in detail, and I absolutely agree that they're sensible. I appreciate the questions the member for Elwick has put. I'm really keen to hear the answers and some further explanation around some of those, and I'm more than happy to be supportive of this bill.